Welcome back to the All Ball Podcast, where it is all ball all the time. You are here with your hosts, Sean and Isaiah. This is episode number 59, and today we are going to be giving our top 25 current NBA players list. You know, the season's about to start, so we said might as well go ahead and get this out of the way. And I'm not going to lie, I think we both have some controversial people and some controversial spots. But before all that, Isaiah, how you feeling today, man?
I'm feeling good, and I'm ready to argue. So
Okay, just automatically knows that we're about to get into this. So,
oh yeah, especially based off of last week's episode, yeah, there's definitely going to be some points of contention here.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and start off with the good note then, because I know that for a fact our number one is going to be the same.
Mm-hmm.
So, I believe that your number one is going to be Giannis, correct?
That is correct.
All right, so that's going to be my number one also. I really don't think we have to talk about, at least like the top 5 players too much, unless that we have them different.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go ahead and move on to number 2.
Okay.
So who is your number 2?
My number 2 is Steph.
My number 2 is also Steph Curry.
Yeah, it's like you said, we don't need to talk about him too much, but I mean, he's reigning Finals MVP, so that says all that needs to say.
And number 3?
My number 3 is Jokic.
Okay, so this is our first, I guess, at the point where we have different players. My number 3 is KD.
Okay. And I can understand that. The reason why I put Jokic over KD is because, for one, Jokic is more reliable health-wise. Mm-hmm. And then number 2, not Jokic, but Kevin Durant had such a terrible playoff experience this season. So I had to knock him down a little bit because of that. And then on top of that, I feel like Jokic's overall versatility is just better than Kevin Durant's just scoring for the most part.
And, I was going to bring that up too about how he did pretty bad in the playoffs. Like, KD is known to be that guy that gets any bucket that he wants at any time. Mm-hmm. And obviously that was not him in the playoffs.
Exactly.
But at the same time, I think when he actually is in that groove, which is 99% of that time, he's basically an unstoppable force on offense. I would say arguably like a top 10 all-time scorer when he's in that groove.
Not even top 10. He is top 5.
Well, I didn't want to go that far just because, there's some really good guys out there that, when they're on fire, they're hard to stop. But yeah, that's why I had him over Jokic, but Jokic is my next, my number 4.
Okay, so we don't need to sit on this too much then, because KD is my number 4. So
okay, number 5.
For me, number 5 is Luka.
Okay, number 5, I have LeBron. Do you have LeBron too much further out?
No. He's not next, okay, but he's close.
Okay. So Luka is actually my number 6.
Okay.
And the reason that I have LeBron still over Luka is just because I feel like LeBron still provides more. Well, I definitely think leadership. I still think that's, he has that over Luka.
Okay, yeah.
But also I still think that he brings better defense. And in a way, I know that I've been talking a lot of trash about LeBron lately. Well, not lately, but just, over the past year or so. Yeah. But he still does have that ability, at least sometimes. He's not still prime LeBron, but he still does have that ability to take over games, just not as much. And I think at least by the end of the season, I'll have Luka over LeBron.
You see, and that reasoning is actually why I put, well, not that exactly, But something along that line is why I have Luka at 5, because yes, you're right. LeBron still can take over games at some points when necessary. But at the same time, Luka does that as well. And he showed it very well in the playoffs, having an excellent playoffs run. So that's what
Hmm.
gave me the edge for him, because he can put up the same kind of numbers that LeBron does, but in a different way for the most part. And he does it with much more team success, even though the team isn't necessarily that good.
Well, another reason why I think I put LeBron right here is just because of his age.
Mm-hmm.
Like, well, LeBron's what, like 37, 38 now?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, to still be doing it at this level, to be arguably a top 5 player is just insane. And then, well, I feel you on the whole team standpoint, but I mean, look at the Lakers.
Yeah, but I'm saying
I mean,
like
you got
the Mavericks, Jalen Brunson he really took a step up this year. But outside of him, like it was just a bunch of catch and shoot role player guys.
I mean, I feel like that's also arguable for the Lakers though, because if you look at the Lakers, I mean, Anthony Davis was out most of the season. Russell Westbrook is is something. I don't know what he is, but he's not Russell Westbrook anymore. Um, and then other than that, you just have a bunch of role players. I mean, you have Austin Reeves getting a lot of minutes. You have guys like Wenyen Gabriel getting a lot of minutes, which at this point you have to surround LeBron around a lot of better pieces than what they have. Like THT should not be like your top 5 best players on your roster. That's crazy.
Yeah, that I'm not gonna lie. The Lakers roster is very unfortunate, but I believe that 2018 LeBron could have carried that roster at least into the playoffs. And so that's the whole thing for me about it. Where, especially with Westbrook there, now obviously he was Westbrooking this year. So we take that into account. But at the end of the day, I think that the younger LeBron could have taken that team still to the playoffs, maybe even to the second round.
I agree. All right, well, let's go ahead and move on. So we're not spending too much time on 2 spots.
Mm-hmm.
But so your number 6 was who?
My number 6 is Kawhi.
Okay.
And,
And my number 6 is going to be Luka.
mm-hmm. And so my thing is that, obviously, like we've said, injury factor does matter. But I think LeBron has shown that he's a lot more vulnerable to injury in these past couple of years. So, with that being said, I can't put him too much ahead of Kawhi in that category now, despite the fact, Kawhi did just miss a full season. But take into account what Kawhi does when he's healthy, and then that's why I give him that extra boost, because he's just, I don't want to say a better scorer, but I'll say I don't know how to put it exactly. I feel like his scoring versatility, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
Because LeBron, he seems like he has a lot of moves because he does a lot of stuff, but it doesn't always work out that well. And so he's usually falling back on drive to the hoop or some kind of crazy three. Whereas Kawhi, he can get the drive, he can get the three, he can get the mid range. And so that ability to kind of get whatever shot he needs and hit it almost every time is a big thing.
Mm-hmm. I also consider the fact that, Kawhi is, a way better defender than LeBron is.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think that LeBron's playmaking is, also way better than Kawhi's.
And that's true.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately,
so what are we at right now?
Yeah, no, we're at number 6, but ultimately,
Okay.
I think the top 4 that I had are in their own range, and then these 3 right here are kind of in there. on range where it's like you could really interchangeably put either one at any number.
Okay.
But yeah, we.
And I'll say that,
Oh, wait,
you know,
go ahead.
same for like the top 4, maybe
Mm-hmm.
for me too. Maybe even 5. But other than that, I feel like this is probably, getting to the point where we're going to start having some controversial spots.
Oh yeah. But so now we're at 7.
Mm-hmm. I have Embiid at 7.
Okay, and that's where I have LeBron.
Okay.
So not too much to
So
say about LeBron. So what's your deal with Embiid?
So I know that he's had a lot of injuries over the year, but I think that's an understatement, huh? But
Super
but
understatement.
but the thing for me is that at least for the last 2 years, he's taken up, the 76ers who have had the Ben Simmons issue. Toby, I get that he's had a step up a little bit, but at the same time, we've also seen that Toby's been very inconsistent and that he's basically a roller coaster.
That fair enough.
Embiid has seemed to stay healthier, at least, over the last year.
That's 100% true. Normally he misses about, I don't know, like 30, 40
30
games, something
Yeah.
around there.
So he's been healthier, which is a plus. He's been in MVP conversations.
And he was a
Another
scoring
plus.
champ too.
Oh, yes, I did forget about that too. That's such a, I don't know why I can't see like Embiid out of all people getting the scoring,
It's because of free throws, man.
he's a very big plus defender.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think that, with the whole Ben Simmons situation, with Toby being your third best player, to lead that team to be, one of the better teams out in the East, I think I have to put him up there. Just because, I mean, when you factor in those injuries, how he was able to stay healthy and still be able to carry his team,
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of why I have him there at 7.
Okay, and that's fair. And honestly, when I really look at it, when I look at these 4, really, because I think of it in blocks of 4. The first 4, like I already said, can be together. And instead of these next 3, I think it's these next 4 from 5 to 8 that can be grouped together. Because now that you're done with that, I can go ahead and say that my number 8 is Embiid. And
okay, and my number 8 is Kawhi.
Okay, and you see, so even in that like area, we keep the same names and we just have them in different orders.
Right.
And so I think that's the thing where it's kind of like that's how you can block them together. Like our top 4 is the same 4 people in different orders. Our 5 to 8 is the same 4 people in different orders. So that's how you kind of separate it into tiers there.
Right. No, I completely agree with you. I think, I mean, at the end of the day, this is all, it's subjective, right? That's the word. Is it subjective or objective?
Subjective.
Yeah, subjective. Okay. At the end of the day, this is all subjective. And I mean, these guys are all top 10 NBA players. So they could be matched, like you said, almost anywhere within those 4 or 5 or whatever. But, this is just our I guess personal preference on what we value more.
Exactly.
So where are we at right now? We're at number 8 going to number 9.
Yeah.
All right. So we already talked about our number 8s. My number 9 is going to be Tatum.
My number 9 is Jimmy Butler.
I have him a little further down the list.
Oh, interesting. You see, the reason that I have Butler at 9 is because of how extremely well he performed in that series against the Celtics. Obviously, it wasn't a perfect series. I mean, any series that you lose isn't a perfect series. But at the end of the day, in game 6 and 7, Jimmy Butler proved why he's a top 10 NBA player to me. He refused to go down and, some people joke about how he missed that wide open shot. He should have just drove it. But at the end of the day, the Heat were only in that game because he did his thing.
And don't get me wrong, I do think Jimmy Butler can be a top 10 player. I just think that Tatum's year proved that he also deserves to be in the top 10.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, him and Jaylen Brown took his team to the finals.
Mm-hmm.
And now I don't know if he deserved to be, in MVP conversations. I don't remember if he actually was or not.
Yeah, I don't think so. Or at least I don't remember hearing about that either.
Right. So I definitely don't think that he should be MVP level, type guy just yet based on what he did last year.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, Jaylen Brown was really like, I wouldn't say roller coaster because he wasn't that bad.
But he was like a kid roller coaster.
Yeah, exactly. He had some games where he was like all right, but then he had good games, but then he was all right again. But at least with Tatum, for the most part, he was pretty consistent throughout the playoffs.
Yeah, and with that being said, since we're on the subject of Tatum, we can go ahead and move to number 10 because that's where I have Jason Tatum. So you see, I still think he's a top 10 player too. But my whole reason that I have him beneath Butler is simply because of how bad he was in the finals.
You talking about Tatum?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, that is where the line ends for the whole consistency through the playoffs.
Because
I didn't want to touch on that just.
And then
I didn't want to touch on that just because. What were we saying?
I was saying because he was great, and then he got to the finals and he gave it up. He says he forgot how to be great.
I didn't want to touch on that part just because that hurt my my whole argument. But rounding out my number 10, you're probably gonna disagree with me quite a bit for this one.
Oh no!
But it's gonna be Ja Morant.
Oh no, bro! No. All right, let's hear it.
So I don't want to talk about it too much because I know we argued about it quite a bit last episode.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll just go over some of the quick points. Like I said, MVP voting took his team, to the playoffs. I think that he's up there with, guys like Steph, KD, Giannis, and Jokic with like offensive. Like he's not their tier, but he's very close to me. Like for my, personal opinion, he's getting up there with offensive firepower. If he develops like a really consistent 3-point shot, I mean, he could be up there with those guys.
Okay, and that's fair. I think that missing 3 ball is the thing that holds him back for me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, at least the main thing that holds him back.
And, I put like Giannis, like obviously because, his frame allows him to do more.
Yeah.
But he's more of a stronger force when it comes to like driving and all that.
Mm-hmm.
He has a post-up game, and he actually, I think Giannis has developed the 3-ball, way better than Morant has so far.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, that's why I have Morant in the top 10.
Wow. So I guess we could move to number 11 now.
All right, my number 11 is gonna be Devin Booker.
My number 11 is Damian Lillard.
Oh, you have him. Oh man, you're not gonna like where I put Dame.
Wow. You see it.
But all right, let's hear it. Let's hear it for Dame.
So for Dame, while he may have missed almost this entire season, that's very much an outlier for him. He normally does not miss this many games in a season. So I'm not really giving him a knock for injury risk. But outside of that, when Dame is healthy, he's top 3 shooter in the league, probably. He's, I don't want to say he's in the upper echelon of playmakers because he's really the only person making plays on his team. But he's definitely a respectable playmaker. And on top of that, even outside of just his shooting, he's a really great scorer. And so I think just
Mhm.
that alone really gives him a huge boost to me.
So for me, I have Devin Booker up there just because he is the best player on a team that did, have the best record
Hmm.
in the West, or actually in the NBA. Also, okay, I want to state this first. I do think that Devin Booker's defense is pretty overrated.
Yes, very much so. I'm glad we can agree on that.
Um, but I think his offensive ability, I think he's pretty versatile on offense. More than Morant, who's more of a,
He's really just a slasher. That's
yeah, it's a slasher. I was gonna say stretcher. I don't know why. I was trying to think of the word slasher. Um, yes, Devin Booker is a lot more versatile on offense, but I think John Morant has him beat on playmaking,
and
at least for myself, because I think that goes more to CP3
hmm
for at least the
I
Suns.
mean, he led the league in assists, so
Yeah.
I think that says all that needs to be said.
um, but yeah, that I do think that his defense is pretty overrated. I will say that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But all right, so let's go ahead and go to number 12.
And at number 12, I have Kyrie.
You're not gonna like where I have those two guys at. um, Number 12, I have Jimmy Butler. That's where he's at for me.
Okay.
So you want to go ahead and talk about Kyrie?
Yeah, I'll go ahead. And, while Kyrie, he has his share of interesting reasons not to play games. At the end of the day, when he does play, he is an absolute threat. I can remember watching that Celtics Nets series. Kyrie Irving was single-handedly keeping them very close in those games. Kevin Durant was getting totally shut down, but it would still be like a 5-point game because Kyrie is just hitting everything. And so, with that being said, he may not be the best playmaker, the best this or that, but he is an unbelievable scorer. And so,
I think,
because of that, I have to put him as a scorer over all of the guys that I have under him.
at least for me, I in a way think that Kyrie's playmaking is sometimes underrated. Not too much, but it is a little bit like,
Yeah, a lot
not
of
to the point
people
like how we're
assume
Devin.
that he can't play make.
Yeah, not to the point like how they do Devin Booker's defense, because that I believe is very overrated. But no, I think it is slightly underrated sometimes. But why I have Butler so low is just because, how do I put this? I think I'm just comparing him too much to the Jimmy Butler that he was like 2 years ago, and I can't get that just 2 years ago he was at that level, and not that he's taken too much of a step down, but he is not the Jimmy Butler, in the finals that was like, what do you call it? That one picture where he's like against the railing or whatever.
He's leaning
Yeah.
over.
I mean, although he did play every single minute of the elimination game that they played. So I do have to give him props for that because that's incredible.
You see, and that's the thing. I don't feel like he's dipped from that level. I just feel like the Heat as a team have dipped from that level. And so it kind of makes it look like he dipped from that level by proxy.
Okay, I get what you mean, because yeah, Duncan Robinson is pretty much not even in the rotation anymore.
Exactly.
Tyler Hero feels like he hasn't really taken much of an increase in I guess his overall game.
Yeah, props to him for Sixth Man of the Year and all, but he definitely hasn't taken that leap that you expect from him yet. And then, like you
Mm-hmm.
said, Duncan Robinson being pretty much out of the rotation at this point is huge when you consider how important he was to that finals run that they had. So
Mm-hmm.
I think the Heat as a team shifting as much as they have, it makes the team okay. It makes the team's lack of success compared to that 2020 season seem like it's a Jimmy Butler problem.
I get what you mean. Yeah. Um. All right. For my number 13, I have Trae Young.
For my number 13, I have DeMar DeRozan. We don't really need to
Okay.
go too deep into this since this is something we talked about last week.
Yeah, for both players, correct.
Mm-hmm. Like
All
it
right.
was this
So,
exact comparison at that.
oh, okay. All right. Well, let's just go ahead and move on to 14 then.
And number 14 is where I have Trae Young.
At number 14, I have James Harden.
Ooh, you're not gonna like where I have James Harden.
Man, don't tell him he's out of the top 20.
You're not gonna
All right,
like
that's
where I have
silent.
James.
That silence tells me enough.
Oh man.
Look, I understand that he's not the Rockets James Harden that we all love and know, but at the same time, he has been in a situation to where Kyrie doesn't want to play. KD's coming off injuries. Then he goes to Philadelphia to try to learn a new team midway through the season. So I just want to give him another whole season to what I feel like he can be. Also, he was dealing with that hamstring injury.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely don't think we'll ever get Rockets, MVP James Harden again. But I do think that we can get, a couple of tiers off of that.
Okay. All right. I can respect that. And then Trae Young, like I said, we talked about him and DeRozan last week, so don't need to really go too deep into that answer. We know really great scorer, a very good shooter, one of the best, and an elite playmaker.
Mm-hmm. All right. Let's go ahead and move on to 15. At 15, I have DeMar.
At 15, I have Ja.
Okay. um. All
So
right.
with Ja, like I said, my thing is one, his lack of versatility in scoring. Now, granted, he is very tough to stop as a slasher, but he has very clearly shown moments of vulnerability on that end. And so I think
Mm-hmm.
with that definitely knocks him down a bit for me. And then on top of that, he really doesn't do much on the other end, which is why he's in this range with these other guys who really don't do much on the other end.
Mm-hmm. Um. I said mine was DeMar DeRozan. Like I said, I don't have to talk about that one too much.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go and move on to 16 then.
All right. And 16 is where I have Devin Booker.
Ooh, I feel like that's kind of low. But like I said, you're not gonna like where I put Dame, and this is where I have Dame.
Okay. And with Devin Booker, it's like you said, overrated defense. And really, the main point that you gave him was that he was the best player on the team with the best record. When in reality, I think that was more of a team effort than a Devin Booker thing. Because Devin Booker, honestly, in terms of numbers and how he looked out there on the court, very similar season to the player that I have listed right after him. Like they had almost an identical season, but injuries
Mm-hmm.
just got the best of the other players' team.
Okay. I have a feeling that player you're gonna name is Paul George.
No.
No. Okay. Um. So I won't talk about Dame too much because you
Mm-hmm.
already talked about Dame. I just really excited to see how he's gonna play with. Well, okay. So I know a lot of people have Jeremy Grant pretty overrated.
Mm-hmm.
I am kind of on that level, but not so much. Um, I'm I just think that hopefully with Jeremy Grant being on the team, it will take some of the pressure off Dame to be more that volume scorer that he's had to be over the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I still think that you're very much on track with by saying that he is one of the best offensive scorers in the league. He basically does it all, from driving to the hoop, being one of the better shooters in the league. Also,
Mm-hmm.
um, my 17 though is going to be Kyrie.
Mm. And then my 17 is Zach LaVine. And it's for that same like reason I just said. His numbers were almost identical to Devin Booker's.
Mm-hmm.
And so take that, the fact that his team at one point was number one in the East until, like I said, injuries started getting the best of them.
Mm-hmm. So the reason why I have Kyrie so low is just the whole fact of him not wanting to play. I know we said we're not factoring in injuries. Never said factoring in personal issues, I guess, if that's what you want to call them.
And you see, no, it's like I said, we're not factoring in injuries like as if the player is injured, but their likelihood to get injured still matters. So you ranking Kyrie as low as you have because of that is completely fair in my book.
Okay. Now, granted, I do completely agree with you that he's also one of the best scorers in the league when it comes down to it. But it's like the whole Anthony Davis situation when he doesn't want to play, what do you call it? Center.
You see, but
And
I
you know
think
how,
that's I think that's a whole bigger issue because AD not wanting to play the five also hurts his actual on the court production as well. Whereas Kyrie not playing, even like when he sat out games for however long, he came back and it was as if he never missed a game.
mm-hmm.
And so I think that's what makes that is a huge difference in my book because a player who can miss all the time in the world and then come back perfectly is a lot better than a player who misses games, he comes back and he's sluggish, he's out of form, and then even when he does get back to form, he's still not as good as he could be because he's not playing in the position that's best for him.
Well, so you know how I feel about the whole players not wanting to play their role, right?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we've gone over this quite a bit. That whole like thing brings down any player. I don't care who you are, but if you don't want to play your role, that like in my eyes tremendously hurts you.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's kind of why I have him low. Like the whole fact that he didn't even want to play any kind of role in the team is yeah, that's why I'm so low.
Okay, fair.
But all right, let's go ahead and move on to number 18. Number 18, I have Cat.
Number 18, I have Darius Garland.
Okay. So go ahead and give your reason on Garland.
Okay, for Garland, it's a similar situation to like how I have Zach LaVine, who is right there with him. Team was one of the best teams in the East before injuries got the best of them. And he was the main reason. He wasn't the only reason by any means, but he was by far the main reason because of his first increase as a scorer, both in efficiency and volume. He really took a step up on that end. I think he still has room to take another step, but he took a step up nonetheless. And as a playmaker, that was the main reason he was drafted, and he has shown to live up to those standards on that end.
Mm-hmm. So I know I talked about Darius Garland not too long ago, so I won't say anything about him too much. I think I talked about him like 2 episodes ago, or maybe in the last episode.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason why I have Cat at 18, for one, yes, I know that the 2020 season was That was the season of the bubble, correct?
Hmm.
So, yes, his games played does look low because he didn't get to finish out the season. 2019 hurt, but he finally got to play, close to a full amount of games this past year. And when you look at centers in the league, Anthony Davis used to be considered one of the better 3-point shooting centers in the league. I think that's been completely
To
debunked
be
or
fair,
whatever you
I
want to
don't know
call it.
why he was ever in that conversation in the first place. I think
Hmm.
the highest he ever shot was like 36, maybe, if that. So yeah, I think, like I've said many times before throughout the year, Anthony Davis's shooting has always been overrated to me.
Hmm. But when you come down to Karl Anthony Towns, he is undoubtedly and unarguably the best 3-point shooting big there is in the league.
Oh yeah, I think it's no debate. If he could get his free throw percentage up, he'd be a 50-40-90 threat every season.
Hmm. The one thing that hurts Cat is this man's playoff run.
Which, I'll go ahead and I'll get into that because
Hmm.
I think that leads to just a bigger overall issue of his defense. And I think that's the real problem.
Hmm.
While, he definitely can make good defensive plays, and I'll say he's a respectable big man defender. But the second he has to guard a wing or a guard, you're begging for a foul.
Yeah. I was actually gonna go talk more about his offensive play during during the playoffs because I know I would text you about how bad he was doing,
Yeah,
and then I don't remember if it was him or Jaren Jackson Jr. who was in constant foul trouble. I think
it
it was
was
both
both. Yeah, I was
actually.
just about to say it's literally both of them. That was the main thing about that matchup.
Yeah,
You see,
that's why I have him there.
and that's why I can't get on his offensive struggles too much because he spent so much time out of the game because he kept getting in foul trouble. And so it's
Mm.
kind of hard to establish a rhythm when you play like 7 minutes in the first quarter and you already have 2 fouls. So then you're coming in late in the second quarter, you pick up another foul. Now you have 3 before halftime. You're out of the game again. And so it was a really bad situation on that end, and it ruined the other end.
Hmm.
And so with that, we can go to number 19 because that's where I have Cat. So we can move to yours.
All right, number 19. Even though this kind of pains me to say, just because I have some disliking of this guy, Anthony Davis.
Okay.
Um, so like I've said before, the whole not wanting to play center hurts him quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
But his whole injury factor, that hurts him quite a bit too. The man played as himself in 2K, got injured. Even 2K knows the 2K got something right.
You see, I want to take that to kind of go ahead and insert something. AD did not even make my top 25 cut, and that was one of the main reasons. Now, there are a lot of guys on this list who have an injury history and have missed plenty of games and all of that. But I think
Mm,
between how absolutely abysmal he played when he was healthy and how many games he missed, that takes him down a really big notch for me.
so the reason why I still have him on this list is because yes, I know his defense has even taken a hit this past season. I know that I'm really trying not to be biased against him. So I'm gonna factor in that the injuries have hurt him quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm gonna say that he's still, other than like Gobert, he's probably one of like the next best defenders for the center position if he ever wants to play the center position, or one of the bigs in the league. Obviously, that goes to Rudy Gobert.
Mm-hmm.
But when he's healthy, and when he's actually not, how do I put this, in a slump, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm.
I think that he's one of the best paint defenders in the league.
You see,
and
if I'm gonna be honest, I'm gonna have to slide him back like 2 or 3 slots probably, because I definitely believe that Giannis and Bam are both better defenders than him.
I 100% agree with you on Giannis, but with Bam, I don't remember if it was the playoffs
he may not be the shot blocker that AD is, but as an overall defender at that position, I think he's better.
Well, I think it was the playoffs where the man just looked like soft. Like, I don't know, like he was like scared to get into the paint or something like that.
He looked off even on the offensive end in the playoffs, so I don't really know what was up with him this season. That I don't even have him in the top 25 either. So don't worry. I'm not saying that he's better than AD or anything like that. It's just generally speaking, on that end, he is usually better.
Okay. All right. Well, let's go to move to number 20.
Number 20, I have Zion.
I don't have Zion in my top 25 at all.
Considering how much time he's missed, that's fair.
Yeah, I can't put someone who hasn't played in so long and has only played a combined like 84 games in 3 years.
But that's not much better.
Yeah. My number 20 is CP3.
Okay.
I do think that his defense has probably taken the biggest hit out of anything, going up in age.
Mm-hmm.
But like you said, he was, the assist leader. I think his offense has just taken a step back just because of Devin Booker being the main guy, DeAndre Ayton, kind of like not being the second guy. But how do I put this? I just don't think that CP3 is much of that offensive threat scoring wise as he used to be.
And that 100%.
To where he's more just relied on for his playmaking at this point of his career.
Mm-hmm.
And I still think that is, top tier, up there with the Lucas and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I have him at 20.
Yeah, Zion, my reason I have him at 20 is, first of all, he's only this low because of the health issues. I think when Zion is healthy, he's proven that he's definitely in that maybe top 11 to 15 conversation with those guys, because he's a dominant force, one of the best scorers in the league efficiency-wise. And really, that's really all there is. Just that alone. He's just like a 27 point per game scorer on 60 plus efficiency. So I think that alone really cemented him somewhere in this top 25 list for me, despite how much time he's missed.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, let's go ahead and move on to number 20.
No, 21. That was 20.
Yes, I'm sorry, 21.
Yeah. And my 21 is Jaylen Brown.
Okay, my number 21, I have Paul George.
Okay. For me, I'll keep it really simple. Put Jaylen Brown because of the playoffs run that they had. Especially when it came down to the finals, I will fully admit this is 100% a recency bias situation. But in the playoffs run in general, Jaylen Brown was a really important piece. He stepped up in a lot of important games. And then even in the finals, with Jason Tatum playing poorly, Jaylen Brown still found a way he kind of channeled that Kyrie Irving reaction that I was having, where every time he had the ball, I was nervous because I was cheering for the other team.
Okay. The reason I have Paul George at 21, I understand that he missed a lot of games this past season,
Mm-hmm.
and he has over the last couple of seasons, just in general. And yes, he did take quite a bit of a hit on his 3-point shooting this past season too.
Mm-hmm.
But I still think when he is healthy, he is one of the best like two-way threats in the league.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that when you're the default best player on the team because your other best players hurt,
Mm-hmm.
and you really don't have many pieces around you to support you, I think that obviously your efficiency is going to take a hit.
Mm-hmm. And that's 100% fair. Plus, like you said, dealing with injuries this season. So that also will take a hit on your efficiency as well.
It's kind of like the whole Dame situation.
Mm-hmm.
Like that Portland team was starting people I had never even heard of. So, yeah, that's why I have him at 21.
Okay. All right. Now 22.
Mm-hmm.
This is where I have James Harden.
22? I have to know why you have him this low.
Man, this season was absolutely terrible for him. This was, while the point totals were up there still, well, not up there because he obviously wasn't Houston Harden, but he still, he averaged 22. He was second in the league in assists, I believe. So I'll give him his credit for that. But outside of that, scoring efficiency was terrible. He had a lot of really rough games in Brooklyn and then ended up missing a ton of time as well. And I think all of that just kind of comes together to why he was so low for me.
I don't even want to argue about James Harden just because I feel like it's going to be a back and forth. So I'll just go ahead and say my 22 is Zach LaVine.
Mm-hmm.
So the reason why I feel like at times I should have put him higher,
Mm-hmm.
but I still think that he's pretty much a liability on defense.
Mm-hmm.
But the one good thing I really have to say about him is that he finally got some really good teammates.
Mm-hmm.
Even an MVP candidate, DeMar DeRozan, and still managed to put up 24 a night. Obviously, that's his average, but
Mm-hmm.
the health thing was one thing. He's struggled to be healthy at least some part of each year.
Mm-hmm.
But I still think that with him getting those real teammates and still being able to average 24 is why I have him at 22. But I also do think at times he should be higher than 22.
Okay. All right. And that's fair. That's fair. So we can move to 23, and I have CP3 at 23.
All right. At 23, I have Rudy Gobert.
Okay. I'll go over CP3 really quickly since you already talked about him. I'd have him this low for the same reasons that you had him as low as you had him. Like you said, he's really not as much of a scoring threat as he used to be. And he's really making his way off of his playmaking. Even his defense, like you said, it's taken a hit a little bit because of age. But I think that playmaking threat and just how elite he is the reason why he's still in the top 25 for me. But same reasons you outlined are the reasons why he's 23 out of 25.
Mm-hmm. And I won't go over Gobert too much just because I think he is pretty much a one-dimensional player. But at that one dimension, he is by far the most elite player in the league at it.
I'll give him 2 dimensions because he is the league leading rebounder as well.
Okay. I was kind of considering that whole thing like one dimension in itself, like the whole like defensive like rebounding type of thing.
Okay, that's fair. The way I kind of separate them because rebounds also includes offensive rebounds too.
Oh, well, yeah, yeah. Well, okay. Well, then we'll put it as two dimensions then. But yes, even if one dimension, he is by far the most elite
at
at
those,
those
yeah,
two
at
things.
those each one dimensions. So, and that's fair.
Don't don't give the ball to this man on offense. He wouldn't post up, Spud Webb if Spud Webb was trying to guard him in the post.
You see,
But
I'll go ahead and say now that once you're done with Gobert, you can move to your 24 because that's where I have Gobert.
all right, well, I'm done with 24.
Okay.
I'm done with 23. So 24 is going to be Jaylen Brown.
Mm.
I won't talk about him too much just because I already said I felt like he was,
Mm-hmm. A kiddie roller
throughout most
coaster.
of the playoffs. Yeah. That's really all I'm gonna say about him. I don't want to go too much in depth with just Jaylen Brown.
Okay, yeah, because I mean, I talked about him a bit too, so we can move to 25 and the list, and that is where I have Donovan Mitchell.
Wow, I didn't even put Donovan Mitchell on the list this year, and I'm surprised you did.
You see,
I actually have Darius Garland rounding out my top 25.
And that's fair. That's fair. I think really with all of these guys that I have at this bottom range, I think they're really close because I'll mention some guys who didn't make the cut for me. Ingram is right there. Paul George is
Yeah, I
right
was gonna say
there.
Ingram.
And then I have AD down here too, where it's some crazy circumstance with the exception of Ingram. He's just in this caliber of player. But for those two guys, PG and AD, it's just some crazy circumstance that has them down here. And so, with that being said, that's why I had to give the credit to Mitchell. He did struggle with injury a little bit, but at the end of the day, he really didn't do much differently this season than he's done in previous seasons, for better or for worse. So I couldn't really move him too far away from where he was last year. And at the end of the day, he was 24 last year. So
I won't go ahead and talk about Garland, but I do want to talk about some of the guys that we actually did leave off the list from last year. Bradley Beal.
Yep.
I believe we left off Bam. I think you might have had Bam, or I might have had Bam from last year.
You did, because I don't have him on
mine. Quite possibly Shea was on there.
I didn't have Shea, but someone I did have that's not on here is De'Aaron Fox. And
I'm surprised Pascal didn't make either one of our lists.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like he was a sleeper for sure. Where I really didn't see enough out of him because the Raptors as a team weren't good enough. So it kind of warped my perception of him. But I think realistically, if I had even remembered him while I was making this list because the Raptors had been relevant, then yeah, he'd definitely be on here for sure.
Chris Middleton.
Yeah, Chris Middleton. Oh man, I laugh looking at my list from last year where he was number 16.
Yeah, I think I had him around there too.
Like, wow, that was insane to think about. Also, the legend Ben Simmons did not make
Ben Simmons. And by far, I believe the biggest drop off of them all, Julius Randle.
You see, I didn't have him. I knew he was a fluke, so I didn't have him in my top 25 in the first place.
But I think I had him around like 18 or so.
Yeah, that one's bad. I think that is by far the worst drop off.
Yeah, that might be an all-time like worst take from all of our episodes. That man went from being in the top 25 and looking at his placement on 2K right now. He's on 74.
Yeah, I don't even think tragic is the word. It's worse than tragedy.
They got Josh Giddey and Jalen Green better than him.
Oh, that's bad.
They got Mr. Free Agent Miles Bridges better than him.
All right, bro.
They got Ben Simmons, who doesn't even play, better than him.
And I mean, hey, he doesn't play, but at least when he does, he's better than Julius Randle.
Yeah, Julius Randle's 1 year All-Star make was, I definitely believe now is a fluke. I don't think he'll ever go back to that. But all right, man. Well, is that all you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, man. This is a long one, so we can go ahead and wrap up.
It is. All right. Well, if you enjoyed the episode or have any, discussion about our top 25 list, go ahead and leave a comment down below. Like and subscribe. Isaiah, any last comments?
Don't forget, share the podcast with as many people as you can.
All right. We will see you next week on the next episode.